speak from here, no? You don't need to see me. It's better you see the screens. And let me say thank you to the society for inviting me, no? Graciela, no? Graciela, Leah, we met in a conference in Philadelphia a long time ago, organized by Richard. That was maybe 2003 or 2002.
Yes, I did. Yes.
That's when I met Leah and Graciela. So it's been a long time and a nice friendship on the distance, but a nice friendship. And then thank you, Jill, wherever Jill is. Oh, Jill, thank you. Yeah, and well, thank you for the invitation. And I want to talk today about something that some people call the Latin American paradox or the Latin American phenomenon. And that's that we have high reported well-being, high reported happiness in Latin America, no? And I want to provide an explanation. I've been, for the last 20 years, trying to understand that, no? And trying to rebate some arguments provided by other people about what is happening in Latin America. And then basically I'm going to talk about human needs. And this is the presentation. I don't know if you can read that, but I'm going to show that Latin America is a happy region, and more than happy, happier than expected. According to the usual suspects, we perform better than expected. And then I'm going to connect with a very important human need. And I will show you the importance of this need, which is the need of love and belonging. Love and belonging is fundamental, and we will show the results and the data. And then I will argue about how these needs are satisfied. And here we are trying to develop a new framework about relationships that deviates from social capital. I don't like the terminology, and also I don't like the emphasis that social capital places on human relations for productivity as resources. I think human relations go beyond basically instrumental relationships. So I'm going to talk about person-based relationships, which are very important everywhere, but which are abundant in Latin America. And that's basically the main argument. We have a kind of relationship, person-based relationships, that are very important for happiness everywhere, and we have a lot here. That's what we call relational wealth. It's not material wealth, it's relational wealth, and that's very important in Latin America. That satisfies an important need and generates a lot of happiness. And it's not related to income. And then I will make some final considerations. So that's the topic, no? Let me start with something we already know. We can go quite quickly here. Latin America is a happy region. At least Latin Americans in general report high happiness levels. And when I use the term happiness, it may be life satisfaction, maybe happiness, maybe positive affect. I will get into this in a moment, but this is like an umbrella concept at the moment, no? So I don't want to get into these metrics of this is not happiness, it's life satisfaction. It's an umbrella concept about well-being as it is experienced by people. That's what matters, how people experience their well-being. This is what we have here, no? And it's a happy region. Of course, there is dispersion across the region and within countries. Of course, not everybody's happy here, no? And some countries are happier than another. But it's not only that it is a happy region, but happier than expected. And this is the analysis of residuals. In an econometric analysis, we expect residuals to be equal to 0. When residuals are positive, it's because it's higher than expected, no? And then we run regressions for the whole world, and we see what are the residuals for Latin America, and that's where we get this happier than expected, no? Let's get to the top 5 countries in the world. The World Happiness Report is coming in 2 weeks, and there is always a ranking. But you can use rankings based on different indicators of how people experience well-being. And here we have the ranking according to the country ladder, the life satisfaction question that comes from the World Value Survey, not from Gallup. Happiness in one's life is another question from the World Value Survey. Positive affect from Gallup, and negative affect from Gallup. So we combine here different indicators. You will see that in the country ladder, there are no Latin American countries. Basically, it's dominated by Scandinavian countries. And of course, we know that life evaluation is related to some cognitive processes when evaluating your experience of being well, and then it is related with GDP strongly. But when you go to life satisfaction, which has a larger affective component, you get completely a different picture. Actually, in the country ladder, Costa Rica was number 6 in the ranking, so it was quite close. And let's hope for a better result in the forthcoming World Happiness Report. But life satisfaction, there you find a lot of Latin American countries. So if you use life satisfaction, Latin Americans are doing great. If you use positive affect, Latin Americans are doing great. So it's probably in the cognitive part that they are not as good as they are in the others. That doesn't mean that they are performing bad. No, the happiness is high even if you use the live country ladder question. No? Let's go to the regions, the average by regions. And this is what we have. If these were the Olympics, we have 2 gold medals. And that puts you at the top, no? And in positive affect and in life satisfaction, and let me specify something else. I'm from Costa Rica originally, no? The World Value Survey does not have Costa Rica. But the Gallup survey in 2007, Gallup asked the life satisfaction question. Costa Rica has the highest value ever measured in the world, 8.4, much above the Scandinavian countries in that Gallup survey. The World Value Survey does not have Costa Rica, so you have some Latin American countries, but not the top one, which is Costa Rica there. But you see, this is something I don't have to convince you that Latin Americans are doing great, whatever the indicators. But it's not only that happiness is high, it's that it is higher than expected. And then what we do here is to go to the usual drivers that the World Happiness Report uses. And with these, we run regulations, and we see, well, let's control by income, social support, generosity, corruption, freedom, more or less what the World Happiness Report does. And let's see, run this for the 140 countries, and let's see the residuals. And we can go for the country ladder. Let's do with the country ladder, and these are the residuals. Green means Latin America. And then you have the US, Canada, there, Europe, and the rest of the world. But all the residuals are positive for the country ladder. So Latin Americans are doing better than expected for their income, for their generosity, corruption, and so on. Let's go to positive affect. Of course, you already know that we were number 1 no, in positive affect, and some countries of Latin America were at the top. This is what you get. These are the residuals, not the levels. All the residuals are positive. So it's not only that we are happy, but happier than expected for the conditions we have, income and others. Not the same with negative affect. Negative affect is not all positive. And actually, some countries are doing, in negative affect, higher than expected, which means more negative effect than expected. So the advantage in Latin America in terms of happiness is positive effect, and life satisfaction, which has a larger component of affective load than what you have in the country ladder. No? So basically, that's the motivation. There is something here in Latin America. What explains that? And then you have the usual suspects. No? Typically, 25 years ago, everybody mentioned, look, there is something wrong with your data. The survey is not correct. No? You did something wrong. You captured the data in a wrong way. No? You don't know econometrics, something wrong in the econometric analysis. But that's not the issue anymore. No? This is data from Gallup, National Statistical Offices, so we don't have to explain problems with the data. And econometrics is very easy nowadays, especially regressions. No? Everybody can run it. So no problem there. Nobody complains about those issues. And then you have what I say, the usual arguments have been facing for the last 20 years from different colleagues in the field. No, these are not critiques from economists. No, it's from the same field of happiness research. Some people raise this question. Well, you know a good friend of us, Alex. Alex developed this idea, Alex Mikalos, this idea of a fool's paradise. No, objective conditions are not good, and subjective conditions are excellent. So it's a fool's paradise. I say that when 600 million Latin Americans are reporting happiness greater than expected, it is the expert, the one that is fool, not 600 million people. That's not a good answer. Other colleagues in the field say there is something wrong with how Latin Americans report. I say there is something different. Of course, if you have positive outliers, it's because the distribution of answers is different. But that doesn't mean that it is not correct. And then one of the arguments I've heard is that, look, low-income people are responding with a 10. That tells us that there is something wrong in Latin America. No, low-income people may be very happy, and I will explain why. So it's not a problem, really, of how they respond. OECD has some cultural studies, and OECD concludes that there is nothing wrong in the responses of Latin Americans. Adaptation, that comes from capabilities. Amartya Sen's happy beggar perspective. And that's completely incorrect. Why Latin Americans adapted to the poor conditions and people in sub-Saharan Africa did not adapt? Why people in England have not adapted to the bad weather they have? No? That poor weather, they have never adapted to poor weather. No? No, it's not a matter of adaptation. And there are two kinds of adaptation. There are adaptations that reflect that we are humans, and that evolution allows us to adapt to a lot of conditions: darkness, cold weather, cloudy. So this is not an issue. So my argument here is basically that there is something else we are overlooking, that we are not emphasizing. This is the omitted variable explanation, a variable that is very important for happiness and is not there in the usual suspects argument. No? And so when we talk about these omitted variables, we relate this with human needs. And everybody here knows Maslow's pyramid. No? Very popular. I don't know why, but it's very popular. Wherever I go, there is a student that always asks, is that related to Maslow's pyramid? No, it's an icon, that pyramid. Well, and this pyramid is important because it tells us what are the categories of human needs. You start with physiological needs, then you have safety, love and belonging, esteem, and at the top is self-realization, no? And I have friends who always believe they are at the top, no? Many in the academic sector, they think, we are the self-realized persons. Those with low education cannot be self-actualized, no, or so on. So we have this, and according to Maslow, and there is an anthropological perspective here, these needs are satisfied sequentially. You have to start from the bottom. That's how you start. When you climb a pyramid, you go and you start climbing from the bottom and you move up. So you start here with physiological needs. Once you satisfy and you are comfortable with your physiological needs, you move up and you start thinking about safety. Once you have a comfortable satisfaction of safety, you move up and you start thinking about love and belonging. So love and belonging comes after you satisfy the basic needs in the bottom of the pyramid, no? This is a sequential satisfaction. What we don't know is which of these needs are more important from a happiness perspective. Where do you get the most happiness from? From the bottom, satisfying physiological needs, love and belonging, self-auto-realization. What is the marginal contribution of satisfying one of these needs to your life satisfaction or your positive effect? We don't know that, no? Well, and this is very important because you go to international organizations and they always tell you, focus on basic needs. Some people even say happiness is a luxury. You have to focus on basic needs. After that, you start thinking about the other needs, no? And then you have, the argument develops into basic needs are very important, and anyway, they come first. And what do we need to satisfy basic needs? Income. And then economic growth is very important. And this explains or provides support to the GDP paradigm, the idea that progress is associated to economic growth, and that we need to grow, otherwise you are not satisfying physiological needs and people will not have well-being. And this is based on that idea of Maslow's perspective. And then we ran an empirical study with data from Mexico's National Statistical Office, more than 30,000 observations, representative at state level. And we ran a study with a lot of information we have about the satisfaction of needs. And the questions that we want to answer is Maslow correct that needs are satisfied sequentially? That you have to wait till your physiological needs are satisfied to start thinking about love and belonging? I think I don't need to provide the data. You already know that, no? Can you be in love even if you don't have income? Do you feel excluded if you don't have income or if you have income? It seems that this argument, at least for me, does not make sense. But well, we will have the data just to confirm, no? Second, what is the hierarchy of needs from a life satisfaction perspective? What needs are more important? And third, how relevant is income? And then I relate this to progress and economic growth and so on. No? What needs are more important? Well, we have a lot of information, a lot of questions, and you can spend the whole day in methodological issues here. I'm not getting into the questions. The paper is published. And we have categories, and for each category, we have the needs. We have the categories, and we have a lot of metrics about nutrition, about whether you have to eat the same food every day or you have variability, and so on. We have a lot of information that allows us to proxy your satisfaction. I will not say this is completely perfect, but this is an approximation to the satisfaction of basic needs and other needs that people may have. No? And then with that metrics, and we also have metrics of life satisfaction, positive affect, so on, we can explore the arguments of Maslow. The first one is that needs are not satisfied sequentially. We have people who are at the bottom in physiological needs satisfaction, and they are enjoying high love and belonging satisfaction. So you can have love and belonging even if you live in a small house with no TV, no car, no so on. Even if you are classified as poor according to your physiological needs satisfaction, you can have love and belonging satisfied, and you can also have esteem satisfied and so on. So it's not correct that needs are satisfied sequentially, and this is important because this allows us to say, well, why not start with love and belonging? Now we have more degrees of freedom to satisfy one need or the other. We don't have to climb the pyramid in the way Maslow recommended. No? Then the marginal contribution of the satisfaction of needs to life satisfaction. Well, this is an econometric analysis. I will not provide the econometric analysis, but we have here the marginal effect of going decile by decile. Actually, what you have to think is that the pyramid has 5 layers, and each layer has 10 steps, which are the deciles in satisfaction of that need. And then we have deciles, and we see which decile in need satisfaction contributes the most to life satisfaction. And you see, you cannot read, but you know that red color is love and belonging, no? Green color is esteem, purple is safety, and so on. From here, we derive a different pyramid. If you are alive with the basics of everything, you have something like, in life satisfaction, you have something like 4.5 in a scale of 0 to 10. And from there, you start climbing the pyramid. But let me put it differently. This is Maslow's pyramid, and this is what is better for you to do if you want to have high life satisfaction. You see, it's a multicolor pyramid. You start with a little bit of love. More love will give you a lot of marginal life satisfaction. A little bit of esteem, some safety, and you go on climbing the pyramid in a different way. And this is good for foreign aid, it's good for development, because we say, look, we don't have to wait till we have a nice house in the suburbs with pools and 2 Ferraris in front. No, you can start with love, which is very important, no? And you will produce a lot of happiness in society. And of course, you can guess that it is not very expensive to produce love. It requires other mechanisms, but it's not very expensive in terms of economic growth and so on. So the needs are satisfied differently. And then we go to the role of income. And these are the coefficients to satisfy the different needs. Income is very important to satisfy physiological needs. Of course, we know that. But it's not so important to satisfy the needs of love and belonging and other needs, no? So that's an argument we have here. And then from there we conclude, look, you can have other ways of producing life satisfaction at a low cost in terms of economic growth and low cost for the environment and so on, no? And well, you cannot read this, but this is very interesting. This is, Richard, you understand where it's at the bottom?
It looks like you.
No, I hope so. No, that's John Lennon and Yoko Ono. And this is a letter that John Lennon wrote. I will not explain the story, but it's very interesting. Now I can read it, but it's difficult to read. But this is what it says. Being rich doesn't change your experience in the way you think. The only difference is basically that you don't have to worry about money, food, roof, those things. But all other experiences emotions, relations are the same. I know I've been poor, that's the end. I've been poor, and now I'm rich. And Yoko has been rich, poor, and rich. And she knows, no? So, and he doesn't need to run regressions to know that. That's something we already know, no? That money solves some problems, but there are other problems that money is not useful. And that's what you get here, no, with the coefficients and so on, and the regressions behind that. So let me, well, this is what William James says, no? And I like this phrase. If you go through life with no relationships, you have reached the bottom. You are unworthy of notice. And he says, a non-existent thing. You become a non-existent thing. It's like coming to this conference, nobody says hi to you. You spend 3 days here, sitting somewhere there. Nobody notices you. 3 days here. You go home. Nobody, not even a dog is there to say hi. You take your frozen food and sit and eat alone. That was a paper in a chapter in the World Happiness Report. And you go to work, and your colleagues don't care about you, only your productivity. And you come back to Lexington, 3 months, and nobody will notice you anyway. No, that's a non-existent thing. And it's terrible, no? Sounds terrible. And you may get a good salary, but that's terrible. No? So that's the issue of love and belonging and human relations. Well, this is one of the results. Now let me go quickly to, this is a survey we ran in 3 Latin American countries, Colombia, Mexico, and Costa Rica, and to Anglo-Saxon population in the US. And they are representative surveys. And one of the open questions was, what makes you happy? No. This is the semantic network for Costa Rica. I don't know if you can manage to see. You see the family, my grandchildren, my children. Those are the most important nodes using some criteria between certainness criteria and so on. This is where it's important. This is Mexico. More or less the same. What makes you happy? It's about relationships within a context. And this is the Anglo-Saxon population of the US.
My dog.
The dog, together with my family, my friends, so on. Actually, I've run a lot of regressions with this. Relations are as important in the US as they are in Latin America for well-being. The problem with the US is that they have little good relationships. It's poverty of relationships. It's not that they are not important, because if you don't have something that is not important, you can be happy. But they don't have something that is important in the US and also in Latin America. So this is to show you that. And this is in the theory of moral sentiments, Adam Smith. No? You can read it. No. Well, after himself, the members of his own family, those who usually live with him and so on, those are the important. No, Adam Smith, not in the Wealth of Nations, in the theory of moral sentiments, you know, it's about relationships. No? So it was there. In the early economies, it was there. So I like this photograph. This is a typical, it reminds me of my grandma, and I would be one of these little kids. No? That's the typical Latin America family, where you have your grandma, but you also have friends of your mom, kids that were in the street playing and come together for the photograph. Everybody is there, no? That's very important, because that's the satisfaction of love and belonging, no? Now, my argument is that not all relationships are equally important for life satisfaction. And this is my critique to some approaches of social capital, not all social capital, but some approaches in social capital. And then we have emphasized relationships that are civic relationships. The civic relationships, I mean relationships that take place between strangers. They know each other superficially, or relationships that are basically instrumental. And we are overlooking the relationships that are more important. And I have the regressions, and I can show you the importance. We are overlooking relationships that are very important. Those that I call person-based. And here I rely on Martin Buber and the distinction between I-it, I-thou relationships, no? So I think that where it's important is I-thou rather than I-it. And so person-based, I'm not going to get into this. This is the theoretical framework we are developing, and probably you cannot read that. But we make a distinction between instrumental relationships, basically transactional, where you approach others trying to get something out of that relationship. The purpose of the relationship is not the relationship itself, but something else external. So in the relationship, you are thinking about connections, no? Getting out something, a new grant, a project, no? Some business, a better job. The approach to the other person is fragmented because you don't care about the person. You care about something specific of that person that is useful to you. That's a fragmented relationship approach to the others, no? These relationships are based on norms, and they are standard. And then you have rules of courtesy, politeness. But politeness does not imply warm relationships. It's how you produce social cohesion, organize a society of strangers, but it's not how human beings bond together. And I'm comparing this with what we call person-based relation, where you approach the other as a person in an integral way. You know his or her past, her life trajectory. No? You take your time to ask questions about the other person. You don't start with, what do you make for a living? No, you don't start. You start with, how's your family? How's your mom? Did she recover? And your daughters? What school are they going? No? Then probably you talk about business. But the person in front of you is very important as a person, not as a tool to extract something out of that person. So we get into a lot. These relationships are warm, genuine, enduring, and provide what I call joint enjoyment of life. You enjoy life not with commodities, but with others who are treated not as commodities, but as persons. That's what we call the joint enjoyment of life. On the other hand, you have the realm of objects, and you treat others as commodities, objects that are useful. The extreme case is transactional relationships, no? And we have now very good examples in some countries of people who are very transactional, no? Presidents, that everything is transactional. No. We are here about person-based. Of course, that if you know the other person and you have a bond, that creates empathy. Or it's there. I don't know if that creates or not, but it's there in the relationship. So let me illustrate with an example. This is what I call person-based. You see the face of others. You know them. And you've been with them since you were a kid. It's your uncle, no? She changed your Pampers. And so they know you. You don't have to wear masks. It's not that you are an economist. You go there, and I have a place where I go, like you, I hope so, and I'm Marianito. I'm Marianito. My uncles call me Marianito. I will not say the other name. They call me, but I'm Marianito, and that's a person, no? Not a professional, not an economist. It's Marianito. This is more or less what we go through life. with many people. We know something, no? There are people here who have known Graciela, no? Glad to meet Pedro. When I met Graciela, you were not here. I'm very glad to see you here. But I've known many of you for many years, no? Andrew, there more than 20 years, no? So we know people as persons, and we know something about them, but we don't know that. And this is what some societies are promoting. That's what we call instrumental relationships. Basically connections. Connections that can be useful for me. Others are treated as commodities, as tools. Of course, which of these needs satisfy better the need? Which of these relations satisfy better the needs of love and belonging? The ones on the left, no? So now let me go quickly. You don't have to read. Now, green means Latin America, blue means US Anglo-Saxon. And we have a battery of questions about person-based relationships. Latin America outperforms. Green is better than blue. 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 Hurry up. I can share with you the presentation. Don't worry. Okay. No. Extended family, no? Green is larger than blue, which means that Latin America has a lot, abundance of these relationships that are important for colleagues and friends. This is a question we ask. Did you experience love yesterday? Not romantic love, caring. You see, 22% of people in the US say not at all. That's real poverty. No? In Latin America, 75% says most of the day. They touch you. They call you Marianito or Pepito or whatever, no? But they know you feel of value as a person. And that makes a huge difference. And I have this other. The percentage who agree with relationships being warm in this society. You see that Latin Americans, 65%, US, 38%. Relationships are warm in Latin America. And these are not instrumental relationships. These are joint enjoyment with others in life. No? Econometric analysis. We're going from here, by the way. Lina is coming. She's the organizer. We're going to Caminito, no?
Yes.
We're going to Caminito, and she asked me not to present all the results because it may take. So I'm not getting into econometric, but believe me, we have different metrics of subjective well-being. It's not only life satisfaction. We have the Cantril, the dinner's satisfaction with life scale. We have positive affect, negative affect. No. So, and we have many regressions, many topics. What we do, person-based relationships are not correlated with income. This is fascinating. You can have very good person-based relationships even if you have low income. And that means that you can have a lot of happiness. And that's a source of happiness that is not related to income. Mm-hmm. I think we can do more with education to increase these kind of relationships and develop programs. Other regressions we have, person-based relationships are significant in explaining subjective well-being at all income levels. Even the wealthy benefit from having good person-based relationships. Even if you have a lot of money, having good rather than poor relationships makes a difference. But income is more important only when you have poor relationships. So the marginal contribution of income to subjective well-being is high in societies or in families, households, where relationships are poor. We have a study how person-based relationships contribute to well-being in comparison to what we call civic relationships, which are the ones emphasized by Putman and social capital as bowling alone, Mark Granovetter, and the value of weak links, and so on. And what we say is that civic relations may make a difference, but what really contributes a lot to well-being is person-based. Also, the supportive quality of relationships. Within the families, you have joint enjoyment and you have support. Both are important, but person-based contribute more than supportive relationships. Then we talk about relational poverty and relational wealth. And relational poverty is not related with development. Actually, there may be an effect of modernization and pro-economic growth policies on deteriorating person-based relationships and oriented people towards an instrumental view of relationships, so on. And person-based are important, at least in the US, as they are in Latin America. I don't know if they are universal or not, but for the sample I have, they are equally important. So the problem is that deprivation of human relationships in the US is a major problem, and abundance in Latin America contributes a lot to our happiness. So this is Latin America is abundant, that's the message. Abundant in a kind of relationship that is important. I have always said that there is something to teach the rest of the world from Latin America. That research from Latin America has something to say to the rest of the world, especially to the modern, so-called modern or developed societies. They lose track of some important issues of value. And you can find them here. And research from Latin America is necessary to develop this knowledge and to go and teach others about that. And when I was president, I always insisted in this society to bring people from all corners of the world. We need people from all corners of the world. Jill is here. You remember, no? Bring people from all corners, because there is something to learn from all corners of the world. And from Latin America, I think societies can learn about the importance of warm, close relationships. Favored by family bonds, but it's different. It's not the family bond. It's the kind of relation, how you approach others in society. This is important for the beyond GDP discussion, because some people the degrow movement tells us, look, you will suffer if you don't grow. No, there are other sources that can provide a lot of well-being and that are environmentally friendly, very easy to get, and something I will emphasize this in a moment, but these other sources are relationships. Community, Javier was talking about community, but community not in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the realm of relationships. What kind of relationships we're building there, That's very important. And accessible to everybody, because low, high-income people can have access to good relationships. So that's more egalitarian than income. And that implies that we can reach many people at low income, at high income, and create happiness if we place this in the policy arena. I don't like to get into policy, although I do some issues about policy. Daniel was talking in the previous presentation, and there are a lot of policy at community level, and family. Education is very important too. Now OECD is working on socio-emotional skills. That's very important. But there are many policies here, communitarian, family policies. But I think what is important is to think about a paradigm that makes of relationships one of the pillars of a good society, and not only economic growth. And then I relate with Francesco. Francesco was talking about the grandchildren, and Keynes had this phrase. It's the same example Francesco mentioned, but this is a different phrase, no? Is we should not think only about the economic problem. By the way, it's not so important once you destroy Maslow's pyramid and transform that, the real human problems. And he says the problems of life and human relations, creation, behavior, and spirituality in the sense, no? And muchas gracias.
Okay, if we have some questions or comments. Please.
No questions?
I do.
We have. And then we go to you.
So, two comments, questions. Thank you. Two comments, questions. The first one is that congratulations for your presentation on relational goods. Totally identified with your view. I once analyzed data from World Value Survey, and I found that there's this question: how much do you feel Argentinian, Mexican, and so on? So a kind of identification question. And I found that at the country level, the most you identify with your country, the more it relates with all these surveys and the question of life satisfaction. So I started to think that it could also explain the international rankings of countries. It could be a bias, as you mentioned. But now maybe I can understand, because the importance of group identity, probably beyond group identity, can be these personal relations. So if you can comment if this makes sense, aligned to your conclusions. And then just a note that you just ended with that, because I'm a psychologist by training. I used to read Maslow as a second source. Then my PhD, I decided to read Personality and Motivation at first hand, and I found that for Maslow there are 6 layers, not 5.
Yeah, he introduced a new one.
Yeah, so and nobody talks about spiritual, the spiritual layer, but you just ended with that. So how can we introduce that to push further to the spiritual needs beyond the love needs? Thank you.
Mariano, would you like to comment?
Yeah, if you want. I think this is love and belonging. And belonging is about identity, no? And let me add, you talk about the spirituality or something. No, actually, you mentioned relational goods, which is the Italian version of what we in Latin America want to call person-based. No, but relational goods. Well, I have some difference with Italians, but also we are very good friends, and we have more similarities than difference. The idea that relations are important, no, is there, no? And of course, there has been some work on relational goods, and there is a phrase I like a lot from one of the reports of the Pontifical Academy of Social Science, and it's about unconditional acceptance. I think that's what you get in most families, with friends, is unconditional acceptance. And then they discuss this idea of societies that accept you only if you are productive. If you don't have a job, you sleep in the street. If you are not productive, you are sent to excluded, no? So that idea of unconditional acceptance is very important in the group. And we have that in the family. As I told you, Marianito arrives and they embrace me. I feel part of a group, and you need to extend that to the society. The idea of unconditional acceptance, no? So that's about identity. And spirituality may be very important. We don't know empirically. We did not test. That was added by Maslow later, I think in the 70s. And he developed this in the 50s. In the 70s, he added that. And so we did not include. But my guess is that love and belonging will still be the most important one explaining life satisfaction. But you can do the empirical study. No, the data is open. Mm-hmm.
Please.
So I'm curious as to if there is changes in trends in relationships between. Is this on? Okay. I'm curious as to whether there's difference in relationship trends across generations. I know I can't speak to Latin America, but in the United States, especially amongst the younger generation with social media, one of the detriments is that people are having trouble making in-person real connections and relationships. So is that similar in Latin America, or are there other factors that you see that differ between ages and generations?
Yes, well, there are many proxies. The data presented here is part of a survey, and we got a grant to study this, no? So we don't have this data in other surveys to know. Less, we don't have longitudinal data. Actually, what we want is to convince the national statistical offices to start measuring relationships. They have very good data on productivity. They have the surveys of expenditure and income, and you know a lot of questions, what kind of shoes you buy, and so. And we don't know as much about warm, close relationships. My main concern, actually that's the motivation behind everything here, is that I think that social trends are deteriorating this, and that modernization is moving us from close relationships, warm, to standardized relationships. They make relationships standard. And person-based cannot be standard relationships. They are unique to the participants. So we need to move beyond that idea that everything is standardized in a modern society and that everybody is a citizen, and that's sufficient, because that guarantees social cohesion. No, we need that warmth, and that implies non-standardized relationships. But we are trying to convince the national statistical offices that this is important. Takes time. You have to position the topic to show that that's important, then convince national statistical office, which is not easy, it's very difficult. And then you need more research and longitudinal data to know. Now, of course, the trends, at least in the what they call the, it's wrong, North American and Australian and New Zealand. That's what they call the NANS. But North America includes Mexico, and they are thinking about US and Canada. So the trends in Canada, US, Australia, and New Zealand in happiness are downward. And young people in those countries have a very downward trend, and also an upward trend in mental health problems. Is that related to social media? It's not clear, because the trend is not observed in other countries, in other regions of the world that also are using social media in the same intensity. So that's not clear. But in 2 weeks, the World Happiness Report it's a whole report about that topic, and young people, and the PISA survey has good data to study that in 47 countries. So let's see what happens. I don't know.
I
We
have a
have
question
two
on
more
that.
questions, the lady and then the lady.
So thank you so much. It was
Yes.
it was a very good session. Thank you so much. I appreciate it a lot. I was wondering about the national culture and based on Hofstede, when you think about Anglo-Saxonic, individualistic countries and collectivist countries, and we know that Anglo-Saxonic countries are more individualistic, and Latin America are more collectivist. Can we say that the more collectivist countries are more affiliative, they are more affiliative, and so they have more warm and personal relationships?
That's great. Are you Argentinian or?
No, I'm from Portugal, I'm Portuguese.
Okay, okay.
We are collectivist also.
No.
Not so much.
No. It's because I use Messi as an example, and Ronaldo. I don't think so. No. I'm not. No. I'm more a Messi. But let me explain. No, that's an issue right now. We're writing a paper on that issue of Latin American culture, and I would disagree with this view that we are collectivist, and that's where Messi comes from. But I disagree. I disagree with this Hofstede range that goes from collectivist to individualistic. There are many reasons. The first one, this is developed in Europe, no, you know Hofstede, and basically it means we are individualistic and the rest of the world is not there. So where do we put them? In the other range, collectivistic. And so collectivistic is like a residual category for 7 billion people in the world. And individualistic is for Europe and US and so on. So I don't like that, but not only because that, it's because I'm Latin America. So I know well this, no? And that's where Messi comes from, no? I would not say Messi is individualistic, but he has amazing individualistic plays. But he's playing for the group because he enjoys playing with others. And then we try to distance ourselves from that categorical dichotomy. Collectivistic, that's what Shigeru Oishi and the group are studying for Southeast Asia. No? Of course, South Korea, Japan, China, those are Confucian. And that's a word I learned from Richard. Richard lived in South Korea, no? And we talked a long time ago about Confucian societies. Confucian societies, relationships have some duty. It's out of duty with the family and so on. I think Latin Americans are more enjoyment. That's why I call this joint enjoyment and not collectivistic. And it's enjoyment, you go through life and you enjoy with others. And so I'm talking about Latin America as a relational culture, not collectivistic, relational culture, and we're trying to move away from this dichotomy, collectivistic, and then we're developing some arguments to introduce the idea of relational culture. And that's Messi. Also Maradona, no? Also Maradona. You know Maradona, no? I never see Di Stefano, but maybe I don't know Di Stefano, how he played. A long time ago, yeah.
The last one.
Yeah, I would like to follow up on that. Thank you. As somebody originally from Latin America, I enjoyed your argument. Now, two quick comments. One, coming back to Maslow, can we say still that Maslow has a point in terms of safety and basic needs, roof, food, etc.? When you look at the survey, the top countries are the Nordic countries, and at the bottom usually you will find Afghanistan, Sierra Leone, countries with low safety, war, etc., etc. So that's my first question, is even if Maslow didn't get it right in terms of your own analysis of loving society, relational societies, if Maslow still has a point in terms of having a basic needs solved to be happy. That's number one. I know that los ricos también lloran, decían en México, but still there is something basic. Otherwise, can you be happy in Afghanistan or Sierra Leone with wars and deprivation, etc.? And my second question has to do with, I like your argument on Latin America on when we call it loving societies or relational societies, warm societies, whatever you want to call it, and what could be the Nordic countries that usually are on the top of the happiness index, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Denmark, etc., that I would call it caring societies. So we could be loving societies, they could be caring societies. In terms of a welfare state that takes care of you, and they may not have the same world relationships, but they promote trust, caring, and support. So I wonder, how do you figure out this relation between the loving societies and the caring societies, and the Gini coefficient, of course, they're more egalitarian societies, and Latin American societies are more unequal, and we know there is a connection between equality and happiness.
Yes, yeah, very important, Daniel. Very important. I'm from Costa Rica, so I will provide an example. But the argument here is that we are overlooking something that is important. You can keep, if you want, the other drivers, and you can say, I'm doing a lot of research on this, that's okay. Everything contributes, no? What I'm saying here is that we are overlooking person-based relationships, and that the literature on social capital, you can go to Coleman or Bourdieu, and they understand this as resources. And if you go to Fukuyama, you know that they understand social capital as something that is useful for reducing transaction costs, expanding the market, and generating market. So that kind of social capital is at the service of economic growth. And then you emphasize instrumental relationships. And what we are emphasizing here is, that's why I don't like to call it social capital, because capital itself is associated in the narrative to grow. So I want to talk about what they are, human relationships. No? And then let me go to Costa Rica, because Costa Rica is ranking, it was number 6. And as I told you, I hope to climb a little bit, you know, for the next World Happiness Report.
Pura vida.
Pura vida, pura vida. In 2 weeks, we will have the results. Let's see what happens with Costa Rica, no? Let's see. Keep that in mind, no? And what do we have in Costa Rica? We have the Latin American, which is more or less universal. And by the way, when we talk about culture, we do this kind of exercise. Let's take people, ANOVA or this kind, no? And of course, the Latin Americans are more similar. People from Colombia and people from Mexico are not so much different in terms of relationships. That's what allows me to talk about a culture. But Costa Rica has that warm, close relationships, and also a good welfare system. Life expectancy in Costa Rica is higher than in the US, even though we spend like 20% in health in comparison.
No army.
And you go to 1949. And 1949, the army was abolished. And we spend more on education. Well, I can tell you my own story. I'm the product of public education, public health. Otherwise, I would not be here. My parents did not have money to send me to school, but there was public school. There was vaccines. I'm healthy, thanks to the social security. Costa Rica, housing is provided. You don't expect a large house, but you have a house, a roof, no? So Costa Rica combines a good social system with excellent relationships. and let's see how it performs in the rank, no?
Thank you, Graciela.
Okay. First of all, Mariano, thank you very much. Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. But what if you allow me to do it?
Me voy, ¿eh?
No. We met Mariano for the first time when we are the two very young. Well, we are still young, no?
Yeah.
Okay. But I am a social worker. He was an economist. He's spending the time doing measurement, all the time measurement. Me no. And now I am very happy, if Mariano allow me to tell, that we are speaking, and he told me that this situation of the concept of social relation and interpersonal relations led us to reflect on perhaps not to be developing so many measurements, no? And begin to be in touch more day to day with the people, with every person. And he said, well, Graciela, I will come to Argentina to have a time with you and to do more qualitative studies. So I am really very happy because I am a social worker. He's an economist, but now he will do more things that I like, that is in the daily life of people. So thank you.
I'm coming here. Yeah, I will come.
Yes,